there are quite a few people in the gallery who are not wearing masks. It's a requirement of being here that people wear masks. If staff can source some masks for people, I can see now just about everyone's got one, but they do have to wear them, and they don't wear them on their knees. Sorry? Well, generally people make application for exemptions here and no one has. All right? Thank you. In accordance with the determination of the Business Committee, I call on the learned member, the Honourable Simon Bridges, to make his valedictory statement.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's been a privilege to be an MP representing the people of Tauranga for several terms, to have been a committee chair, a senior minister, a senior spokesperson, leader of the National Party and an opposition leader. There have been highs and lows, and even the lows have provided good material I wouldn't want to be without. Look out for National Identity 2 a couple of months before the next election in all quality bookstores near you. I've enjoyed helping people with complex problems, from surrogacy issues to acute health conditions, to injustices over housing, ACC and much more. I still feel humbled when I meet the parents and their children, or people who've won against the odds and getting the treatment that they deserve, say, for that rare disease, because of my team and I. I've enjoyed meeting with local businesses, churches, community outreaches and clubs. I remember running late for a meeting at the men's shed on 17th Avenue, Tauranga, a while back. I raced in and asked all of the older men who were there to come together, from building wooden toys, desks, bookshelves and bird boxes for others. They did so and then got out their packed lunches, and I ate some of what they had brought, while I also gave a little speech about Tauranga and the value of community. They were polite, but it was all a little odd. Then my phone went, and Marie wanted to know why I wasn't at the opening of the Tauranga men's shelter, not the men's shed. You live and learn in this job, Mr Speaker. I've also enjoyed being involved in doing real stuff, building dams, geothermal plants, roads, train stations, UFB, electric charging networks and much more. Leadership on all these things mattered, but the workers and designers are of much greater value than the ribbon cutter at the start and end of it all. And I've enjoyed the people and the drama. Those who've been grateful, even those who've been hateful. At least they felt something about me and politics. It's not all about me. The times of tension, from revealing Grant's, quote, leaked budget to, quote, train wreck media interviews, whether with John Campbell or Susie Ferguson or others, where the commentariat have confidently pronounced my career over many a time. Well, now it is on my, actually probably Natalie, Emlyn's, Harry's and Jemima's terms. This won't be the longest valedictory. The really good stuff, as I say, is for the next book. I do, though, want to offer some incredibly gratuitous advice. 14 points for the 14 years I've spent in this place. A series of and another things. I feel at some level I have, in qualified terms, the right to proffer. First, to new MPs, don't breathe through your nose, or whatever it is Holyoake is reported to have said. I reckon the motto of the bad guy in the Highlander movie is much better when he said, "Excuse me, I've got something to say. It's better to burn out than to fade away." And that's partly maybe why I'm going when I am. Second, and again to new MPs, don't let anything ruin your sleep. It's the most important thing, and nothing is worth it. The worst you worry about happening rarely does. And when it does occasionally, who cares anyway? You'll be fine. Many believe conspiracy theories are not what really happens these days. We can't remotely control any of that. So they'll probably think it's all some elaborate hoax and not true anyway. And perspective is really important. As Natalie likes to tell me, and she wanted me to take this out of the speech, by the way, but I haven't, get a grip, get over yourself. Your country is smaller than Sydney, and no one knows where it is. Look at all the crazy shit Boris has gotten away with, and he's still PM. Like I say, who cares? You'll be fine anyway. Third, to more senior MPs, I make this plea. Please, let's not be quite so poll and focus group driven. They will make you nice and beige and timid, in short, wishy-washy. And as small as our remote little islands are, it's 5 million people, 26 million sheep, 10 million cows, and 100 million or so native birds deserve better. You were elected for your values, principles, character, and judgment, and to be bold in pursuit of them. If the people wanted a robot these days, they could probably buy one on the internet. And as I think John Howard once told me, good policy is almost always good politics in the end. And as maybe David Farrow or some other pollster once told me, polls and focus groups don't, or at least shouldn't, tell you what to do. They should only ever be an aid, helping you to decide how to get to where you think is right. Let's more often do what we think is right and lead the polls and the people to where they should go for New Zealand, not follow them to a place where the breadth of opinions, those we vocalise anyway in this House and the press gallery, become narrower and narrower and beisier and beisier. Nice Beigeland rather than New Zealand, please, no way. Fourth, and relatedly, let's have less small target, short-term political tactics and more large, long-term strategies, please. Big, bold battles of ideas won't actually hurt us. And the alternative, as we are seeing in Australia right now, is contests fought on personality and, quote, competence. And I think is truly depressing. If that's all this place is about, what's the point? Play your politics in opposition timid, and you'll necessarily govern timid as well. I say again, be bold. One more related point, fifth, independent thought and differences of opinion are actually good. I've sometimes thought there are two perfect political jobs in this world. That of a backbench MP in the United Kingdom. There are hundreds of them, mostly with absolutely no chance of ever being a minister, let alone the PM. And do you know what they do? They speak their minds freely and cast their vote freely. They aren't nice and beige and timid. The other is the United States Senate, where again somehow the whip is more relaxed. So they don't just believe in free speech, they even practice and vote on it. Sixth, this point about independent thinking, by the way, also applies to the press. I love you all, and Claire Trevett, you're my favourite. Although your story this last weekend certainly tested that favouritism. But I do despair how narrow the viewpoints are here as opposed to in the UK, the United States, and even Australia. More viewpoints are tolerated, actually encouraged in their deeper media environments. Our press gallery can hunt as a pack. Okay, then there's Barry. But basically, as a pack. And I say to you, if every one of you has the same basic position on a complex matter, you are probably all engaged in groupthink and quite probably wrong. Go spend some time in the provinces or one of our bigger cities. That's not this one, to recalibrate and get a fresh view. 7, while 3 people still like me in this room. While I'm on, my friends, in the press gallery, your most important job is to hold the powerful to account. And let me give you a clue. It's the government that has the power. Yes, the National Party has been relatively newsworthy in recent times. And you do tend to get better at holding to account the longer parties are in government. But if the government of the time is giving you your best talking points every single day you come to this place, maybe you've got the balance wrong. And by the way, if they are good enough, they'll more than withstand the pressure. If they are not, they will fall over time by the wayside. Just something to think about on your wander home this evening, he says with passive-aggressive tone. 8th, experts don't know everything when it comes to matters we must decide in government and politics. Yes, in many, maybe even most fields, experts can offer valuable, sometimes crucial assistance. But it is entirely wrong, in my view, to think there is a podium of truth, some voices whose words are the definitive answer. We did away with that religious certainty centuries ago. I think they called it the Enlightenment. Politicians and journalists' job, I might add, isn't to slavishly follow experts. That's an abdication of our responsibility as elected officials, elected to weigh, and as I've said, bring our values and principles to bear on the issues at play. Nothing in politics and government comes down to the science says this. There are always wider social, economic and normative implications as well, which we have a duty to have an opinion and decide on. 9, to MPs on select committees, less time arguing where the comma goes in a report no one will read, please. And more time debating from your principles and values for your electorates and communities. 10th, while on Parliament, both in terms of this House and its committees, I've already been a bit mean about the wishy-washiness, the beigeness descending on politics. It's right to say it hasn't always been so, either in terms of the substance of debate or the characterfulness of how it was put across. When I first arrived, there were still Clarks and Cullens and Hydes and Peters, as well as a host of others, including you, Mr. Speaker, prepared to get up and go at it. I didn't always agree with what was said. Sometimes MPs went too far, but they were bold and without fear or favour. They'd send shivers down your spine. Today, I fear they might be cancelled. The reasons for our ever-growing tepidness are many, from MMP to the mainstream and social media environments. But some of your efforts, Mr. Speaker, to turn this place into more of a school library than a debating chamber, respectfully, haven't helped. My view is that over centuries, parliaments that are in the same tradition as ours, among the roles they've fulfilled, such as the development of policy and laws, have also played some very primal ones that are still important, such as saying what needs to be said, or maybe what doesn't, but that lets off society's steam like a pressure valve at a difficult or delicate time. The jaw sometimes, even if it's a bit hee-haw in here, is better than war out there. And we've sadly seen a little of that very recently. We over-sanitise, I suppose my point is, this place at our, and more importantly, society's peril. 11, I've come to realise, I admit too late, that parliamentary reform to strengthen it against the executive is important. I say too late because the tragedy is that while in government, most, including me, don't reform this place because it suits our interests at the time. That was true for the last national government and respectfully probably is for this Labour one too. I in truth don't know exactly what the reforms should look like. But when select committees are in essence majority rubber stamps for government, where everything anyone outside of the government of the day says is voted down, it's a bit hard to say they aren't more executive than Parliament-led. Likewise, regarding the role of the Speaker, which is so important to the tone and function of this place, I don't see it as a panacea, but a secret ballot for Speaker, as happens in most similar parliaments today, could help wrest things away from the government of the day. 12th, in regard to the National Party that I will have been a member of for 30 years this year. Caucus colleagues, senior ones, would be wise to remember this one very important thing. As a party that believes it represents our entire nation, as is often said, National is and must be a very broad church of urban, provincial and rural, of liberal, centrist and conservative. We must be scrupulous to allow all these views through without too much control, let alone censorship, and seek to keep the balance, the peace among all those values and interests without letting one dominate the other. Despite what is sometimes said, I took great pains to ensure this while I was leader, and future leaders must continue to do so also. Give primacy to too narrow a spectrum through a belief that the prevailing views in central Wellington and Auckland make up New Zealand, and National will over time cease to be the strongest, most representative political movement we have. 13. They say politics is Hollywood for ugly people. And it's true, politics has at some level an attention-getting personality factor to it. David Seymour wasn't on Dancing with the Stars for his great rhythm and sway. And I certainly wasn't on Celebrity Bake Off for my baking skills. It's far from all glamour and glitz, however, and I do think politics is getting harder. 14, John Key got rid of our perks, and maybe he was somewhat right to. But let's be clear that while it's not why I'm leaving, this job done well is tough and not actually that well remunerated for what it entails. So on MP's pay, let's all remember that we need the highest quality people here, not just the very wealthy, for whom money doesn't matter, or those naive enough, as I once was, to enter and crazy enough to stay in the game no matter what. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to sound so negative. It's been great. While there have been lows, as I say, there have also been highs, and it's the little things that make it all worth it. Like an email I received after my lonely vote just weeks ago on the conversion therapy bill. Dear Simon, I have always thought you are one of the worst and most hopeless MPs in Parliament. But I do want to thank you for voting no on the conversion practices vote. For once in your career, you got it right, yours faithfully. High praise, and like I say, it's the little things that make it worth it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I couldn't have done this time in Parliament without the special people who've helped so much. It's dangerous to name names, but I want to acknowledge my Tauranga staff over the years. Glenn Harris, Marie Brooks, the real MP for Tauranga, Sonia Hoyes, electorate chairs the late Phil Simpson, Ron Scott, Rosemary Turner-War, and then Andrew Von Daddles, Kenneth Brown, Sir Paul and Cheryl Adams, and many others. My key staff over the years in Wellington, too many amazing people to name, but I think of Cameron Oldfield, Janine Begg, Lucy Paul, Jamie Gray, Vanessa Rawson, Michael Fox, Christy Martin, Stephanie Edridge, Rachel Morton, Mac McKenna, Liam Kernahan, and Finn Stitchbury. To everyone named and unnamed, thank you. Of course, I thank my family, my mum, Ruth Bridges, and my in-laws, Tom and Alicia, my many, many siblings, and most of all, Natalie, Emlyn, Harry, and Jemima. I've spent as much time away as at home over the years, and oftentimes glued to a phone or to some other very important work. I hope now I'm home more often, you don't get sick of me. There's a reasonably high chance of that. I'm proud of my whakapapa. I'm proud to be the first Māori New Zealander to lead one of the two big parties. Sorry, Winston. People sometimes can't understand my conviction in conservative politics and how I reconcile it with my forebears and the prevailing views in Māori politics today. But the reason I have been and continue to oppose policies like Māori wards, health authorities and the like is because while I deeply understand our country has quite a way to go on race, personally, I don't want to be treated differently on the basis of it. I don't want special help because I'm not a victim. I'm good enough in any room, whether this big one, our cabinet, or commercial boardrooms in the future, and so are all Māori. I accept as a conservative conviction politician I'm somewhat out of favour these days, a young fogey maybe, but politics ebbs and flows, and as with other things, maybe views like mine will move back into vogue one day. Conservatism to me is simply an instinct or a disposition. While we shouldn't be reactionary to changing times, we should carefully weigh the transaction costs of change. Like G.K. Chesterton said, there is usually a reason for the fence, and so before we tear it down, we want to think things through carefully. Mr. Speaker, I didn't read other people's valedictories before preparing these remarks, you can probably tell. The only thing I read in advance was my maiden speech from 2008. I liked it. It was a pretty good speech. That may age better than this one. In it, I finished with something Tony Blair said in his valedictory to the House of Commons. And seeing as Prime Minister Ardern, Jacinda Ardern, worked for him, and my boss for another day or two, Chris Luxon, likes his third way, I thought I'd quote it again. To all my colleagues from different political parties, some may belittle politics, but we who are engaged in it know that it is where people stand tall. Although I know it has many harsh contentions, it is still the arena that sets the heart beating a little faster. If it is on occasions the place of low skullduggery, it is more often the place for the pursuit of noble causes. To those who stay here as I move on, know, yes, I've seen the skullduggery, but more often the noble causes. And I will continue watching because I know that what you do matters. I see you standing tall and I recognise your nobility. Keep firm hold of the baton. I now let go from my grip and run boldly and hard. Thank you.
Generally people make application for exemptions here and no one has. All right? Thank you. In accordance with the determination of the Business Committee, I call on the learned member, the Honourable Simon Bridges, to make his valedictory statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been a privilege to be an MP representing the people of Tauranga for several terms, to have been